No.
All right, we're going to start today's show by talking about Nick Chubb. I don't know, guys, if there's a better player-person combo in the NFL. I just think Nick Chubb, if you could go into the lab and build the perfect football player, all aspects, mind, heart, body, work ethic, and his compassion for his teammates. The guy loves everybody. He loves everybody so much so. Listen to what he said about Baker Mayfield. Said this, I think, 2 days ago, the first day of OTAs.
Yep.
He said, he'll still always be one of my best friends. Not my friends, guys. He said best friends.
Yeah.
He's a great guy. I know with his intensity and his attitude, wherever he lands, he'll be ready. Now, granted, they came in together, the same draft class. Yep. They had some success together. They had some highs and some lows. But so you think that, wow, maybe he is in Team Mayfield. But then just when you start thinking he's in Team Mayfield, he has this to say about new quarterback Deshaun Watson, the guy who, by the way, ran his best friend out of town. He's a great guy to be around. We all love him. He's a natural leader. He's been here since OTA started. He took us on a trip. I think those things bring in trust and bonding for our team.
Yeah.
What a likable guy. Is he a fence rider or is he really this nice?
No, it's not that he's a fence rider. Nick Chubb is not going to say anything bad about anybody. I don't believe he dislikes. I believe what he says about Baker, and I believe what he says about Deshaun Watson. I think if he didn't like somebody, I doubt he would say it, but I don't think that's the case. Obviously I've been down on Baker Mayfield, but I'm not going to say Nick Chubb's lying about Baker Mayfield. I don't believe that at all. I think Nick Chubb believes Baker's going to go somewhere else and be a pretty solid quarterback, and I'm sure they do have a good relationship. But if he didn't like Baker, he wouldn't say it. Same thing with Watson. I'm sure he loves Watson. I'm sure he loves Baker. Nick Chubb is the man, though. I go to your initial point. He is my favorite Cleveland Browns player in the 11 years I've been covering the Browns. This will be year 12 coming up. And even before that, I can't think of another player on the Browns that I've ever liked more. Again,
I'm with you on that.
I don't know him personally.
Right.
I've interviewed him a couple of times, but you don't really know anybody until you know him. But I've never heard a bad peep. I actually have a good friend who used to live in the same, I don't even want to say what it is.
Yeah,
in the same vicinity as Nick Chubb, and said the guy never had a party. He was always friendly to everybody. Yeah. Like if anybody bothered him and said hello, he always was friendly. So by all accounts, the nicest guy and an incredible football player.
Brad, you know what it takes to be successful in politics. Yeah. You are the mayor. It seems like he could be a mayor or whatever he wants.
He don't like to talk as much as Brad, though.
I don't know that anybody dislikes him or he dislikes anybody else.
Well, let me say, I think Nick Chubb is the epitome of a Southern guy, right? He's got Southern hospitality. He comes out. I don't think he's offensive to anybody. His work ethic is what he brings to the table every day and shows everybody what he is. So I kind of like the way you try to kill Baker underway. It says he ran your guy out of town, right?
Well, put it this way: if he didn't agree to come to Cleveland, Baker would be our quarterback.
But I'll say this though. So Nick Chubb here, he's doing the politically correct thing. He's signing off with his guy on this end.
Yeah.
He's signing on to his new guy coming in here, right?
Yeah,
because he got to work with this guy.
Got to grease those skids.
Right. And you never burn a bridge because you never know when you're going to see somebody again, right? And so Nick's laid right down the middle, right? And he does it without having to say a bunch of words.
He's dope because, he understands the game. He understands the mind game. He understands what he got to say. And he said, I understand this is a business. So what I'm going to do is, that's my man over here.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? That's my
mans.
people. That's my mans in them. You know what I'm saying? He eat birthday cake with him. You somebody's dude when you eat birthday.
Right, no
if
question.
you show up at a little kid birthday party and give a gift and you the only grown dude there and you ain't got kids yet, that means that's your guy.
Right.
So I like what Nick Chubb did right there, but he said, but don't get it twisted. This new dude we got in here, he see what the talent is looking like. And I'll go a step further. I'll say this. I think Nick Chubb not only is the most dependable, he's one of the best teammates. He's probably one of the rocks on offense. I'd argue that Nick Chubb has been the best player on the Cleveland Browns for the last 3 years.
Shout out to Kevin Stefanski
right.
for putting that basketball hoop out on the basketball.
I love that.
on the football field.
I know, smart.
Because most football players swear they're like the second coming of Jordan, right?
I think they are. Yeah.
Miles Garrett. In full disclosure, I do have to disclose one thing. The Ohio State football players and basketball players got into it one time when I was at Ohio State, and they challenged us to a basketball game at Jesse Owens Rec Center.
I wish I could
so
be
you
a fly
talking
on
about
the
the Chris
wall.
Carters, the Pepper
Chris Carter's
Johnsons,
hooping
the
Kick
Keith
their ass.
Byers, right? And I have to Thad Jemison, I have to respectfully say, that they whooped that butt.
Yeah.
we took an L.
Y'all took
we
an
took an
L?
L.
Wait,
we,
you did?
We took an L. We took an L.
What?
I took an L. We were betting money. And, in college, you don't have no money.
How did they beat you?
Because they could actually play.
Who was the best baller?
So Chris Carter was the best
Chris
by far.
Could he have played in the NBA?
Chris was multi-talented across the board.
So fast.
Because I said, damn, Chris, why you didn't come out here and play with us? He's like,
I wouldn't have, in a million years, I wouldn't have thought that's where you were going with that story.
Here, we'll get Keith Byers on the show one day, right? He won't ever let me live it down every time he see me. And then when Chris Carter hosted the Sports Awards here that one year, he said, matter of fact, let me tell you this story. I see my man's out in the audience.
I can see Chris doing that.
Yeah, it's hard for you to hide in the audience.
Right.
I think the bottom line here is Nick is the guy that any of the 32 head coaches would love to have on their roster.
You'd love to have 50 Nick Chubb.
What I love most about him is he's humble. He is superstar status in this game.
Yeah,
and
no doubt.
I think if he was used differently and a little more aggressively, he could be the premier offensive player in the game that wasn't a quarterback. I believe he's that good.
Yeah.
I think we've only scratched the surface on what he can be. But we're lucky to have him, guys. And we know the window for running backs in the NFL is pretty small.
Yeah.
Yep.
So let's just
And he
enjoy the heck
signed
out of this guy while we have
contract
him.
extension. You usually don't like to pay running backs too much money,
Right.
Because their shelf life is small. But his contract was very reasonable. He was not looking for every last dollar. He just wanted to get paid fairly. He did. He made nothing of it. G's right. He's the best player on the team. As much as I love Myles Garrett too,
I agree with that
I'm
too.
taking Nick Chubb over
argument
Myles
here.
Garrett.
We might look back over time and find out that Stefanski's methodology for playing Hunt and Chubb together has prolonged both of their careers.
No, that's exactly
true.
part of the thinking.
That's true.
I think that's.
And by the way, another thing about Chubb that I like, and I'm not, again, I want to make it clear, I'm not an anti-celebration guy. I'm fine with celebrations in the end zone.
I know where you're going.
But Nick Chubb scores, and what I love about this is he's like, I just did what I expected to do.
Yeah,
I don't need a
exactly.
He's confused. It almost looks like he tries to get rid of the ball so fast, so there's no chance of a celebration here. No,
he doesn't want the spotlight. Yeah.
He doesn't like to talk too much.
He reminds me of Walter Payton.
Yeah.
In that Walter was just the epitome of class. I think one of the most prestigious awards in the NFL given every year is in his honor.
Yeah.
And I think that's appropriate. Nick Chubb, to me, is cut from that same Walter Payton cloth. Yes. And I hope we have him for a very long time. And I hope he gets to see the ultimate, and that's the Super Bowl.
Well, I don't want to ever see him in another uniform.
I couldn't take that.
Disturbing.
Well, I think that's why he's loved by the city, right? He really represents the work ethic that goes on in the city. People come in and get it done and just go on about their business, right? And so I think when you're following and rooting for a person, I think that it's clear that he's one that can be rooted for because he's just carrying out the morals and ethics that you want to be represented on the field.
Yeah, he's a great representative of the city of Cleveland.
Think about the most accomplished professional athletes right now in Cleveland. Jose Ramirez, Nick Chubb, Myles Garrett. They're all guys that are very likable.
Yeah.
Now I know Nick and Jose don't talk a lot, especially Jose, because with the English. But they're all I think of them all as kind of blue collar guys. And,
I do too. Yeah.
Myles Garrett's got a much bigger personality than the other two, but we'll talk a little bit later about the D&D. He's a dork, and it's kind of cool that he's a dork, and I think people really like that about him. I don't know. And even the young Cavs guys who are coming up as superstars also seem like they're cut from that same cloth.
They seem humble, and they seem happy to be part of the party. Cleveland's lucky right now to have that collection of athletes that we do with Evan Mobley and Ramirez, and you mentioned Chubb and Garrett. These guys, these aren't guys that are going to, be on the wrong side of the law. They're not guys that you're going to see, spouting off at fans or losing their temper. Very even-keeled and superstars on the field, but I think superstars off of it as well. Let's talk about a report on Baker Mayfield yesterday. I found this fascinating because as we're trying to figure out how much of the Browns or how much of his $18.8 million salary the Browns will end up picking up, there was a report out yesterday that talked about a deal between the Browns and the Panthers that sounds like it was really close to happening. But the moving parts of the deal, Carolina wanted the Browns to pick up between $13 and $14 million of his $18 million salary, about 75% of that. Browns wanted more compensation to take on that much money of his contract, and thus the deal didn't happen.
Right.
Your initial thought when you heard that, Bull, is that something that they'll live to regret?
Yes. I guess in the end, if they were going to eat $13-14 million, I don't know how much that you can regret it that much because in the end you're only saving $5 million. but I think you will regret it. I don't think it's a disaster, but I think you will regret it because I'll be surprised if they're able to move him and not eat at least that much.
I agree.
At this point.
Brad?
Well, it depends on how it plays out, right? Again, I'm a bit of a proponent. I'm not going to back away from it. I think that he's at some point, if Watson's suspended, he's under center here, right? And I think the deal can reemerge in some other form, right? You know, it's hard for professional teams to say, I got to pay you for a mistake I had, right? I got to pay for it to go away. So I don't think the Browns want to eat that much
But it
money.
happens now more than it used to.
Yeah, but but here, Bull, in some places, some people readily eat it. Dallas eats it, or the bigger markets eats it. I mean, the places in the smaller markets.
But the Browns did it with Odell last year.
Well, but here, they're not going to do it all the time, right?
No, not all the time,
They can't do it full. This is not this type of town, right? This is just not. I don't care what sport it is. This is not this type of town, right? And so they're hesitant about it. Now, how it plays out is this thing could get hairy down the stretch here because it could get kind of ugly here because it depends on how hard Baker Mayfield wants to play it, right? And if he draws the line in the sand, I was telling somebody the other day, if he draws the line in the sand, the Browns are going to draw a line in the sand. This thing could get ugly here.
Well, you look at it. This might be kind of soft. You would have got the 14. 14 is a big number, but it's more than what I thought the Browns were going to pay. I mean, 14. I think they want to do somewhere between 8. They might look to 8 to 10, but to go to
I think they'd be thrilled if they could get that now.
Right now, the longer it goes, I'm wondering how much of that number changes. So they wanted back then 13 or 14.
Right.
As the season goes on, nobody gets hurt. What if you get to the third preseason game and he's still there?
It's not even just hurt. It would have to be a catastrophic injury.
Yeah, it would be like that guy is done for like the year. So now you're looking at a position where the Browns might have to eat that 18. And if you got him on the roster at some point, and I'm not even a huge Baker proponent, but I will say this: I'm for the players. And if Baker gets to a point where he on the roster, he just sitting there, and this regular season is coming, I would have to do him a solid and be like, you know what? We're going to have to cut him loose.
Right.
I cut him loose.
Get what you can and move on.
Yeah, just move on. Just let him get his money.
I asked this person if they would come on the show and be a guest, and he wasn't willing to do that. So I didn't know how much of this are you gonna claim? He said, well, I'm not gonna go on TV and say it, but it's a former player, then executive, now media member, who I was just spitballing my theory, and Brad, you've co-signed on it, that, well, what if there's a huge suspension? And I wanted to know his thoughts on that. And he said, the Browns and Baker Mayfield are irrevocably broken. They cannot repair that bridge. And I said, well, under what scenario could you ever see him wearing an orange helmet again? And we've been talking about what if there's a big suspension for Deshaun Watson? He does become this insurance policy. Mm-hmm. He does not think that a Deshaun Watson suspension would put Baker Mayfield under center. So I said, then you're saying there's no scenario where that could happen. And then he gave me a scenario that I hadn't thought of. And I don't know if the Browns have thought of this. Injury. But he said there's one way Baker Mayfield plays for the Browns again. And that's if the injury is to Deshaun Watson. If the injury is to Deshaun Watson, and it's a catastrophic one that has cost him the season, which he's had one of those before, if that scenario happens, the Browns then, even though they'd have to pivot because their backup quarterbacks that they've brought in are more in the mold of running the Deshaun Watson offense than Baker is. He said that's the only scenario that I could ever see Baker Mayfield taking another snap because now he has more information on this than I do. He said, no, they're not fixing it.
So G and I have been vindicated.
Well, not necessarily. Not necessarily. Here's the thing. So he asked me what I thought of that proposal, and I said, it's interesting because we've discussed this on the program 10 times, and no one has really brought that scenario up.
I hadn't thought about that.
And you know why we haven't thought about that? Because God forbid, right?
Why
God forbid.
Why would that change, in his perspective, why did that change it for Baker? Or
it would be, because of, he said if Baker isn't moved before Deshaun's hurt, there's no chance he plays if there's a healthy Deshaun Watson, even if there is a lengthy suspension. He thinks, I said, what if he gets 8 games? He said, it doesn't matter. Baker's not taking another step.
So what happens here? Because
unless Deshaun gets hurt.
There have been many professional franchises that have held on to players and they did what was in the best interest of the team, not the best interest of the player. And that required you sitting down. You sat down, right? And when I needed you is when I went to you. Look it up.
Oh, that's happened many times.
I think the team thinks it's in the best interest of the team to have him gone, too.
Well, it depends on who's at the helm, right?
So I asked that question.
You have some general managers and presidents that don't care about the outside noise. Like, I'm doing what's in the best interest of my organization, what I feel like I'm going to do. I don't care what kind of pressure's out there.
We've yet to see what it's hard to see what the Browns actually think about Baker's skill set because they got Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson's skill set is so much higher than Baker's. It's like, okay, we don't even talk about it. But we don't know what the difference in their mind is between Jacoby Brissett and Baker Mayfield.
We don't know.
We don't know.
No.
Maybe they think Jacoby is comparable. Maybe they think Baker is an overall he's just killing Jacoby Brissett.
Okay.
And then here's the thing. If you did bring him back in that scenario where Deshaun Watson got hurt, got injured, you know what the great thing about it is? Baker wouldn't look over his shoulder because Deshaun Watson is not playing. He can't. Right. So and this is last year, and that would make the most sense in that case.
And Bull, you made a point a minute ago. You said, well, it just depends on, you don't think the Browns are ready to have him back. I asked that question. Do you think the team is ready to have him back? And his answer was three-pronged. He said, if you ask the players, I have no doubt under that scenario, the players would. He said the players in the locker room, there's no rift between Baker and the players. That's what he told me.
Okay.
He said the players would open him with open arms, primarily because they want to win.
Right.
They want the best available player. And if you put Deshaun, Baker, Jacoby in a lineup, Deshaun would be the first pick. He said, even though you don't know the difference between Jacoby and Baker, he said that Baker would clearly be the second pick, and then Jacoby. But he said it just depends who you ask. If you ask the team, the players, they would like to have him back. He doesn't know, he hasn't had this conversation with Stefanski. He believes Stefanski would definitely welcome him back. But he said, I don't know where the front office is, and more importantly, ownership. Because as you guys know, if ownership isn't willing to sign off on something, it just isn't going to happen here. It's not. And if they say, from their vantage point, that there's just no way my team can ever have Baker Mayfield under center again, it's not going to happen.
Right, that's it.
So we just don't know. It's all hypothetical. And I hate that hypothetical, too, because when I read the text that said, what if D gets hurt?
Yeah. Oh.
My heart sank. I can't even stop to think about that.